Every morning began the same way for Keisha Miller. She'd wake before dawn, stretch her arms above her head, and stare at the ceiling for just a moment before swinging herself into the wheelchair that had become both her legs and her burden. The accident had happened a year ago, a distracted driver, a rainy intersection, a life forever changed. But Keisha refused to let that define her. She was only 16, and she still had dreams that mattered. Her mother, Diane, worked double shifts at the hospital, so most mornings Keisha was on her own. She'd gotten good at managing, making breakfast, packing her backpack, rolling herself down the ramp her uncle had built outside their modest brick home. Independence was something she'd earned through sweat and stubbornness. But independence didn't protect her from the cruelty of others. The neighborhood was quiet at this hour. Birds sang from the oak trees lining the street, and the air smelled like dew and fresh-cut grass. Keisha tried to focus on these small mercies as she rolled herself toward the bus stop 3 blocks away. Her arms were strong now, stronger than they'd ever been, but her heart still felt fragile. Because waiting at that bus stop, almost every single day, was Brad Thompson. Brad was a senior, tall and athletic, with a varsity jacket he wore like a crown. He wasn't the smartest kid at Lincoln High, but he had the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His friends, 2 boys named Tyler and Marcus, followed him like shadows, laughing at his jokes, mimicking his swagger. Together they made Keisha's mornings unbearable. At first it had been small things. Whispered comments as she rolled past, snickering when she struggled to position herself on the sidewalk. They called her roller girl and half speed, words that stung deeper than they should have. Keisha told herself to ignore them, to rise above it. Her mother always said, "Baby, some people are just broken inside. Don't let their darkness dim your light." But it was hard to stay bright when every day felt like a battle. Today, Keisha had left extra early, hoping to beat them to the stop. She needed just one peaceful morning, one moment where she didn't have to brace herself against their mockery. The sun was just beginning to peek over the rooftops, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. She allowed herself a small smile. Maybe today would be different. But as she rounded the corner, her heart sank. Brad was already there, leaning against the bus stop sign with his arms crossed. Tyler and Marcus stood nearby, tossing a football back and forth. When Brad spotted her, his face lit up with a cruel grin that made Keisha's stomach twist. "Well, well," he said loudly, making sure his friends could hear. "Look who's rolling in early, trying to beat the traffic, roller girl," Tyler snorted. Marcus looked away, uncomfortable but too weak to speak up. Keisha kept her eyes forward, her jaw tight. She positioned her wheelchair a few feet away, hoping the bus would arrive quickly. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the wheels, trying to appear calm even though her pulse was racing. Brad took a step closer, then another. She could feel his presence like a storm cloud blocking out the sun. And in that moment, Keisha knew today wasn't going to be different at all. Today was going to be worse. The morning had started with hope. It was about to end with something that would change everything. Keisha tried to make herself invisible, an impossible task when you're sitting in a wheelchair that seems to announce your presence to the world. She focused on a crack in the sidewalk, tracing its jagged path with her eyes, willing the bus to appear around the corner. Just 5 more minutes. That's all she needed. But Brad wasn't interested in silence. He thrived on attention, on the power he felt when he made someone else feel powerless. He walked directly toward her, his sneakers scuffing against the concrete with deliberate slowness. Keisha's heart hammered against her ribs. "You know what I don't get?" Brad said, stopping just inches from her wheelchair. His voice was loud, performative. "I don't get why someone like you even bothers. I mean, what's the point? You can't play sports, you can't dance. You can't even stand up for yourself." The words hit like physical blows. Keisha's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Responding only made it worse. Her mother had taught her that. "Don't feed the beast," Diane would say. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent and let God handle it." But God felt very far away right now. Tyler laughed nervously. Marcus looked down at his shoes. Keisha wondered not for the first time if Marcus ever felt guilty, if somewhere inside him there was a voice saying, "This is wrong, stop him." Brad leaned forward, his shadow falling across Keisha's face. She could smell the mint gum he was chewing, could see the cruel amusement dancing in his eyes. And then, without warning, he planted his foot against the side of her wheelchair and shoved hard. Time seemed to fracture. Keisha felt the world tilt violently to the left, her hands flying out in a desperate attempt to catch herself. But there was nothing to catch. The wheelchair tipped over completely, metal clattering against concrete in a sound that echoed down the empty street. Keisha's body hit the pavement hard, her palms scraping against the rough surface, her shoulder twisting painfully beneath her. The pain was immediate and sharp, but worse than the pain was the humiliation. She lay there on the ground, her wheelchair overturned beside her like a fallen monument to her helplessness. Tears burned in her eyes, hot and unwanted. She hated crying in front of people, hated giving Brad exactly what he wanted, proof that he could break her. Brad's laughter rang out, harsh and triumphant. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with false innocence. "Guess you should have been more careful, roller girl." Tyler laughed too, though it sounded forced. Marcus said nothing, but he didn't help either. He just stood there, frozen. Keisha's vision blurred with tears, but through them she could see the empty street stretching out before her. No one was coming. No one was going to save her. She was alone, just like she'd always been alone. But then she heard it. Faint at first, like distant thunder on a summer afternoon. A low, rolling rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her. Keisha lifted her head, confusion cutting through her pain. What was that sound? Brad heard it too. His laughter died in his throat. He turned toward the street, his confident smirk faltering. The rumble grew louder, deeper, closer. And with it came the unmistakable roar of engines, not one or two, but many, dozens. The sound of an approaching storm made of metal and fury, growing so loud it drowned out everything else. Brad's face went pale. Tyler stopped laughing. Marcus took an involuntary step backward. And then they appeared around the corner, a wall of chrome and leather thundering toward them like an unstoppable force. The first motorcycle rounded the corner like a steel guardian emerging from nowhere. Then another appeared. Then three more. Then a steady stream that seemed endless, filling the narrow residential street with raw power and purpose. These weren't flashy sport bikes. These were road machines. Harleys, Indians, Hondas. Motorcycles built for the long haul, ridden by people who looked like they'd seen everything life could throw at them and refused to back down. Keisha remained on the ground, her body still aching, but her attention was completely captured by the sight unfolding before her. The bikers wore leather jackets adorned with patches she couldn't quite read. Some had gray in their beards, lines etched deep around their eyes. Others were younger, but they all shared the same expression, serious, purposeful, protective. The motorcycles kept coming. 10, 20, 30. Keisha lost count somewhere around 50, as they continued to pour onto the street in perfect formation. 2 by 2, like a military convoy responding to a crisis. Brad took a step backward, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. Tyler and Marcus exchanged terrified glances, the football forgotten on the grass. The casual cruelty that had defined their morning routine was being replaced by something they'd never experienced before, real consequences. The lead rider brought his bike to a stop just feet from where Keisha had fallen. He was a tall black man, broad-shouldered and commanding, with a thick beard streaked with silver and eyes that held both warmth and steel. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, the kind of mark that told stories without words. His leather vest bore patches that read "Road Guardians" and "We ride for those who can't." One by one, the other bikers cut their engines. The sudden silence was almost as powerful as the roar had been, a thick, expectant quiet that seemed to press down on everything like a physical weight. Brad stood frozen, his face the color of chalk. Tyler and Marcus had backed up against the bus stop sign, looking like they desperately wished they could disappear into the metal. Nearly 100 bikers now surrounded the bus stop, forming a protective semicircle that blocked every escape route. They didn't need to say anything. Their presence spoke volumes, a wall of strength and solidarity that declared without words, "This ends now." The lead biker swung his leg over his motorcycle with practiced ease and walked toward Keisha. His boots made steady, deliberate sounds against the concrete. Behind him, the other riders dismounted in synchronized silence, standing like sentinels. "Hey there, sweetheart," the man said, his voice deep but surprisingly gentle as he knelt beside Keisha. "Let's get you up off this ground. My name's Terrell Jackson. We're here to help." Keisha nodded, unable to find her voice. Tears still clung to her lashes, but they were different now, not tears of humiliation but of overwhelming relief. Terrell reached for her wheelchair with one hand while offering his other arm for support. His movements were careful, respectful, treating her not as something broken, but as someone who deserved dignity. With surprising gentleness for such a large man, he helped her settle back into her chair. A woman with silver-streaked braids stepped forward, pulling a first aid kit from her saddlebag. "Let's take a look at those hands, baby girl," she said softly. Her name patch read Gloria. She knelt down and began gently cleaning Keisha's scraped palms with antiseptic wipes, her touch motherly and warm. Behind them, the 99 other bikers stood in absolute silence, their collective gaze fixed on Brad, Tyler, and Marcus. The three boys looked like they were facing a firing squad. Terrell stood and turned his attention to Brad. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet intensity in his eyes was more terrifying than any shout could have been. "Son," Terrell said, his tone carrying the weight of judgment without aggression, "I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation about respect." Brad's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. All the bravado, all the cruel confidence that had made him feel untouchable just moments ago had vanished completely. Gloria finished bandaging Keisha's palms with gentle precision. "There you go, sweetheart," she said, patting Keisha's shoulder. "Those should heal up just fine." The kindness in her voice made Keisha's chest tight with emotion she couldn't quite name. Terrell took a step closer to Brad, his presence alone filling the space between them. He didn't invade the boy's personal space, didn't need to. "What's your name, son?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel that made everyone present stand a little straighter. "B. Brad," the boy stammered, his voice cracking. "Brad Thompson." "Well, Brad Thompson, I'm going to ask you a simple question, and I want you to think real hard before you answer." Terrell crossed his arms over his broad chest. The morning sun glinted off the patches on his vest. "Do you think what you just did was acceptable, pushing a young lady out of her wheelchair, laughing while she lay hurt on the ground?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car drove past on the adjacent street, its driver slowing down to stare at the gathering of motorcycles with wide eyes. Brad's face flushed red. His eyes darted to his friends, looking for support, but Tyler and Marcus were suddenly very interested in their own shoes. I didn't mean to." "Stop right there," Terrell interrupted, his tone sharpening just enough to cut through the excuse like a hot knife through butter. "I've been riding these roads for 32 years, and in that time I've learned one absolute truth. The measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching. It's what they do when they think nobody's looking. And what you did this morning, when you thought this young lady had nobody to stand up for her, that showed me exactly who you are." An older white biker with a long gray ponytail stepped forward from the crowd. His vest displayed a Purple Heart patch alongside his Road Guardian's insignia. His face was weathered, etched with the kind of lines that come from hard living and harder choices. "I spent 2 tours overseas," he said, his voice gravelly but clear as a bell. "You know what I was fighting for, the idea that people should be able to live without fear, the idea that the strong should protect the weak, not prey on them. What you did today," he shook his head slowly, "that spits on everything I believe in, everything I fought for. A Hispanic woman with kind eyes and graying hair spoke up next. I'm a teacher, been one for 28 years. I've seen kids like you before, kids who think being mean makes them powerful. But you know what happens to those kids? They grow up lonely. They grow up empty. Because cruelty doesn't build anything lasting. It just destroys. One by one, other bikers began to speak. A young black woman talked about losing her sister to suicide after years of bullying. An older man described watching his grandson withdraw from the world because kids at school made fun of his stutter. A middle-aged couple explained how their daughter stopped eating because classmates called her names. Each story landed like a hammer blow. Brad's eyes were now streaming with tears, the reality of his actions finally breaking through his defensive walls. Tyler had his face in his hands. Marcus was openly crying. "I'm sorry," Brad whispered, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Don't apologize to us," Terrell said, gesturing toward Keisha. "We're not the ones you hurt, she is." All eyes turned to Keisha. She sat in her wheelchair, her bandaged hands resting in her lap, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. For a year, she'd endured Brad's cruelty in silence, swallowing her pain because she believed fighting back would only make things worse. But now, surrounded by people who saw her worth, who demanded she be treated with dignity, she found a voice she didn't know she still had. "You made every morning a nightmare," Keisha said, her voice quiet but steady, cutting through the morning air like a blade. "Every single day I had to prepare myself for whatever you were going to say or do. I didn't do anything to you, Brad. I just existed, and somehow that was enough to make you target me." Brad's tears spilled over. I don't hate you," he said weakly. "Then why?" Keisha's voice cracked slightly, raw emotion bleeding through. "Why did you make me feel like I was worth nothing? Why did you take the hardest year of my life and make it even harder?" Brad had no answer. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and damning. Marcus, still standing by the bus stop, finally found his voice. "Man, she's right, this has gone way too far. We shouldn't have." "You shouldn't have what?" Gloria interrupted gently but firmly as she walked over to Marcus. "Shouldn't have stood by and watched. Shouldn't have laughed along. Baby, being a bystander is a choice too. You might not have pushed her, but you let it happen. That makes you part of the problem." Marcus nodded slowly, the truth settling over him like a heavy blanket he couldn't shake off. The morning sun had fully risen now, casting long shadows across the street and illuminating the scene with harsh clarity. In the distance, Keisha could hear the faint rumble of the approaching school bus, still several blocks away but getting closer. Terrell knelt down again, this time positioning himself at eye level with Keisha. His expression had softened, the hardness he'd directed at Brad replaced with something that looked almost like pride. "Keisha, that is your name, right?" She nodded, surprised he knew it. "Your mama works at Mercy General Hospital," Terrell continued, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Night shift nurse, right? One of the best they've got." Keisha's eyes widened. "How do you?" "My wife had surgery there last year. Your mama took care of her, stayed late on her shift to make sure my Denise was comfortable and calm. Talked to her about her grandkids, made her laugh when she was scared. That kind of care doesn't come from just doing a job, it comes from having a good heart." He paused, his eyes warm. "And I can see that same heart in you." Tears welled in Keisha's eyes again, but these were different. These were tears of recognition, of being seen not as the girl in the wheelchair but as a whole person with value and strength, and a family legacy of goodness. "When we heard what was happening at this bus stop," Terrell continued, "when one of your neighbors, Mrs. Chen, lives 2 houses down, called our club and told us there was a young lady being harassed every morning, we made a decision." He gestured to the assembled bikers behind him. "See, we're all part of the Road Guardians. We ride for kids who are being bullied, for people who need protection, for anyone who feels like they're facing the world alone. And we want you to know something important." He placed his hand gently on Keisha's shoulder. "You're not alone, not anymore, not ever again." Gloria stepped forward, reaching into her jacket pocket and pulling out a small card embossed with the Road Guardians logo. She handed it to Keisha. "This has my number on it, honey, and Terrell's too. If you ever need us, and I mean ever day or night, you call. We'll be here, all of us." A Hispanic man with kind eyes and a salt and pepper goatee raised his hand. "We've got a chapter meeting every Thursday night at the community center on 5th Street, 7 o'clock. You're welcome anytime. We've got other young people who come, kids who have faced what you're facing. You'd fit right in, and we'd be honored to have you." Keisha looked down at the card in her bandaged hand, emotion overwhelming her ability to speak. All her life, she'd been taught to be self-sufficient, to handle her problems on her own. Her mother worked too hard to burden her with school drama. Her few friends were sympathetic but ultimately powerless against someone like Brad. She'd learned to expect nothing from the world except more struggle. But here were 99 people who had shown up without being asked, simply because they believed she mattered. Simply because a neighbor cared enough to make a phone call. "Thank you," Keisha finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to say anything else," Gloria replied warmly, squeezing her shoulder. "Just promise us you'll remember this moment. Remember that there are more good people in this world than bad ones. The bad ones are just louder sometimes. But we're here. We're always here." The sound of the school bus grew closer, its distinctive rumble now audible just a block away. Terrell stood, brushing off his knees. He turned back to Brad, Tyler, and Marcus, who stood huddled together looking utterly defeated. "Brad, Tyler, Marcus, I want you three to think long and hard about the kind of men you want to become," Terrell said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You can either be the kind of person who tears others down to feel big, or you can be the kind who lifts people up. That choice is yours to make. But know this," his voice hardened slightly. "We'll be watching. This community is smaller than you think, and word travels fast. If we hear that any of you have bothered Keisha again, or anyone else for that matter, we won't be nearly as understanding as we're being right now. Are we clear?" All three boys nodded vigorously. "Yes, sir," they said in unison, their voices small and broken. The school bus pulled up to the stop, its brakes hissing as it came to a complete stop. The driver, an older black man named Mr. Patterson who'd been driving this route for 15 years, opened the doors and immediately froze. His eyes went wide as he took in the scene. The crowd of bikers, Keisha in her wheelchair with bandaged hands, three teenage boys who looked like they'd seen ghosts. "Everything all right here?" Mr. Patterson asked cautiously, his hand hovering near the radio that would connect him to dispatch. "Everything's just fine now," Terrell replied with a warm smile that transformed his intimidating appearance into something almost grandfatherly. "We were just helping this young lady get ready for school. She had a little incident, but she's okay now." Mr. Patterson's eyes softened with understanding as he looked at Keisha, then at the three boys. He'd been driving long enough to know exactly what had happened here. "You all right, sweetheart? You need me to call your mama?" "I'm okay, Mr. Patterson," Keisha said, and she meant it. For the first time in a long time, she truly meant it. Two of the bikers, a burly white man with a red beard named Dutch, and a petite Asian woman with purple streaks in her hair named May, stepped forward without being asked. They moved with practiced coordination, working with Mr. Patterson to operate the wheelchair lift and ensure Keisha was secured safely in the designated spot near the front of the bus. May leaned down close to Keisha's ear and whispered, "You've got this, warrior. Keep your head high. You're stronger than you know." As Brad, Tyler, and Marcus boarded the bus, they kept their heads down, moving toward the back without making eye contact with anyone. The usual swagger that accompanied their presence was completely absent, replaced by a heavy shame that seemed to weigh down their every step. Other students on the bus stared at them with undisguised curiosity and judgment. Mr. Patterson prepared to close the doors, but Terrell stepped up one last time. "You take care of her today, Patrick," he said to the driver, using his first name with the familiarity of old friends. "She's had a rough morning." Always do, Mr. Patterson replied with a respectful nod. And Terrell, thank you for all of you showing up. That's what community looks like. That's what it's supposed to look like, Terrell agreed. The doors closed with a pneumatic hiss, and the bus pulled away from the curb. Keisha immediately turned to look out the window. All 99 bikers still stood there in formation, watching until the bus was safely on its way. Some waved. Others simply nodded with quiet dignity. Gloria blew her a kiss with both hands, and Terrell stood with his arms crossed, that same protective stance that said without words, "We've got you. Always." As the bus turned the corner and the bikers disappeared from view, Keisha felt something fundamental shift inside her. It was subtle but profound, like a door opening in a room that had been locked for too long. For the first time in a year, she didn't feel like the accident had stolen her power. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd found a different kind of strength altogether. The other students on the bus had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes and dropped jaws. A girl named Jasmine, who sat 2 rows back and had always been friendly but never quite close, leaned forward with undisguised amazement. "Keisha, oh my God, are you okay? What just happened? Were those bikers actually with you? Did you know them?" Keisha turned to face Jasmine, and for the first time in months she smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes and made her face glow. "Yeah," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "They were with me." "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen," a boy named Jordan said from across the aisle. "Brad's been a jerk to everyone for years. Someone needed to put him in his place." "Did you see how many there were?" another student chimed in. "That was like something out of a movie." The excitement rippled through the bus. Students who had never spoken to Keisha before suddenly wanted to know everything. Who were the bikers? How did she know them? Would they come back? The attention was overwhelming, but not in a bad way. For once, people weren't looking at her with pity or treating her like she was fragile. They were looking at her with something closer to respect and admiration. Mr. Patterson glanced in his rearview mirror and caught Keisha's eye. He gave her a subtle wink and a smile that said, "You're going to be just fine, kid." When the bus pulled up to Lincoln High School, word had already started to spread. A few early arriving students had heard something about bikers and a confrontation at a bus stop, and the rumor mill was churning at full speed. By the time Keisha rolled off the bus and into the school building, dozens of eyes followed her progress down the hallway. But these weren't the pitying stares she'd grown accustomed to. These were looks of curiosity, interest, even awe. She heard whispers as she passed, "That's her. Did you hear what happened? Brad Thompson finally got what was coming to him." Keisha's first class was English with Mrs. Rodriguez, a teacher she'd always liked. As she rolled into the classroom, Mrs. Rodriguez looked up from her desk with concern. "Keisha, I heard there was some kind of incident this morning. Are you all right? Do you need to see the nurse?" "I'm okay, Mrs. Rodriguez," Keisha replied, holding up her bandaged hands. "Just some scrapes, nothing serious." "I'm glad you're safe," the teacher said warmly. Then, lowering her voice, she added, "Between you and me, I heard what Brad did. I've already reported it to the principal. That boy has had this coming for a long time." As class began and other students filtered in, Keisha noticed something different. Brad's usual seat in the back corner remained empty. So did Tyler's. Only Marcus showed up, and he looked like he hadn't slept. He took a seat as far from everyone else as possible, his shoulders hunched, his eyes red-rimmed. During lunch period, the cafeteria was buzzing with energy. Keisha sat at her usual table near the windows, and within minutes, Jasmine appeared with her tray. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, though she was already setting her food down. "Sure," Keisha said, surprised but pleased. 2 other girls, Aaliyah and Christina, joined them moments later. "Girl, everyone's talking about what happened," Aaliyah said, her eyes wide. "You're like a celebrity now." "I don't want to be a celebrity," Keisha admitted. "I just wanted one peaceful morning." "Well, you got way more than that," Christina laughed. "You got an entire biker gang as your personal bodyguards. That's next level." They talked and laughed, and for the first time in forever, Keisha felt like a normal teenager having lunch with friends. Not the girl in the wheelchair, not the victim of bullying, just Keisha. Across the cafeteria, she could see Marcus sitting alone at a table, pushing food around his plate without eating. Brad and Tyler were nowhere to be seen. By the end of the school day, the principal, Dr. Harrison, called Keisha into his office. She felt a flutter of nervousness as she rolled through the door, wondering if somehow she was in trouble. But Dr. Harrison's expression was kind as he gestured for her to come in. "Keisha, first and foremost, are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. "I understand there was a serious incident this morning involving Brad Thompson." "I'm okay, Dr. Harrison," Keisha replied. "Some scrapes and bruises, but nothing broken." Dr. Harrison nodded, his jaw tightening slightly. "I want you to know that we take bullying very seriously at Lincoln High. After speaking with several witnesses, including the bus driver, and reviewing what happened, I've taken immediate action. Brad Thompson has been suspended pending a full investigation. His parents have been notified, and there will be a hearing next week to determine if further disciplinary action is warranted." Keisha felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, vindication, but also a strange sadness. She'd never wanted to ruin Brad's life. She just wanted him to stop. "Tyler and Marcus will also face consequences," Dr. Harrison continued. "While they didn't physically harm you, their complicity and failure to intervene makes them accountable as well. They'll be required to attend counseling sessions and complete community service hours focused on anti-bullying education." "Thank you," Keisha said quietly. Dr. Harrison leaned forward, his expression serious. "Keisha, I want to apologize. As the principal of this school, it's my responsibility to create a safe environment for every student. Clearly, I failed you. You should never have had to endure what you've been going through. Moving forward, we're implementing new policies and training for staff to better identify and address bullying. And I want you to know that my door is always open. If you ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable, you come directly to me. No questions asked." Tears pricked Keisha's eyes. "I appreciate that, Dr. Harrison, really." As she left the office, Keisha felt lighter somehow. The weight she'd been carrying for so long, the fear, the shame, the constant anxiety, had started to lift. It wasn't gone completely, but it was loosening its grip. That afternoon, Diane picked Keisha up from school early. She'd left work the moment she heard what happened, her face tight with worry as she helped Keisha into the car. But once they were driving, Diane's worry transformed into something fiercer. "Baby, I am so proud of you," Diane said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I'm so grateful to those bikers. When I think about you lying on that pavement," her voice broke, "I can't even. If something had happened to you—" "Mom, I'm okay," Keisha said gently, reaching over to squeeze her mother's hand. "I promise. I'm more than okay, actually. For the first time in forever, I feel like maybe things are going to be different." "They are going to be different," Diane said fiercely. "I'm calling that school every day if I have to. And I'm cutting back my shifts so I can be here for you in the mornings. No more of this being alone at the bus stop." "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Diane interrupted firmly. "You're my daughter, my priority. Everything else can wait." That evening, the doorbell rang just as Keisha and Diane were finishing dinner. Diane answered it to find Terrell and Gloria standing on the porch, still in their riding gear but smiling warmly. "Mrs. Miller, I'm Terrell Jackson, and this is Gloria Martinez," Terrell said, extending his hand. "We're with the Road Guardians. We just wanted to check in on Keisha, make sure she's doing all right after this morning." Diane's eyes immediately welled with tears. "Come in, please come in," she said, ushering them inside. "I've been wanting to meet you to thank you properly. What you did for my baby," her voice caught. "I'll never be able to repay you." "No repayment necessary," Gloria said warmly, pulling Diane into an unexpected hug. "We did what anyone should do. We looked out for someone who needed it." They sat in the small living room, and over coffee, Terrell and Gloria explained more about the Road Guardians, their mission, their community outreach, their weekly meetings. They invited both Keisha and Diane to attend the upcoming Thursday gathering. We've got about 40 regular members, Terrell explained. All different backgrounds, all different stories. But we're united by one thing, the belief that everyone deserves to feel safe and valued. And Keisha, you're part of our family now, whether you ride or not. Gloria pulled out a small leather vest, youth-sized with the Road Guardian's patch already sewn on the back. This is for you, she said, handing it to Keisha. You don't have to wear it if you don't want to, but we wanted you to have it. You're one of us now. Keisha held the vest in her hands, running her fingers over the embroidered patch, a motorcycle with wings spread wide, symbolizing freedom and protection. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. The following Thursday, Diane drove Keisha to the community center on 5th Street. The parking lot was already filled with motorcycles when they arrived, their chrome gleaming under the streetlights. Through the windows, Keisha could see people gathered inside, laughing and talking. Her stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. What if she didn't fit in? What if they'd only shown up that morning out of obligation and didn't really want her around? But the moment she rolled through the door wearing her new vest, the entire room erupted in applause and cheers. Terrell strode over immediately, his face breaking into a huge smile. There she is, our warrior. Gloria was right behind him, pulling Keisha into a warm hug. Welcome home, baby girl. Over the next hour, Keisha met the other members of the Road Guardians. She learned their stories, tales of loss and redemption, struggle and triumph. She met Devin, a 19-year-old in a wheelchair who'd lost his legs in a motorcycle accident but now rode a custom trike. She met Sierra, a 15-year-old girl who'd been relentlessly bullied for her weight until the Road Guardians intervened. She met veterans and teachers, mechanics and nurses, artists and accountants, a beautiful tapestry of humanity united by compassion. 3 months had passed since that transformative morning at the bus stop, and life had shifted in ways Keisha never could have imagined. The Road Guardians had become her extended family. She attended meetings every Thursday, helped organize their annual charity ride for disabled youth, and even started a blog about accessibility and bullying awareness with Devin's help. The blog, called Rolling Forward, had gained a surprising following, with comments from people all over the country sharing their own stories. At school, the change was equally remarkable. Brad had transferred to another district after the hearing, his parents' decision following lengthy discussions with school administrators and a recommendation from the counselor. Tyler and Marcus remained at Lincoln High, but they kept a respectful distance. Marcus had actually approached Keisha one day in the library, his face serious and his eyes genuine. I know this doesn't fix anything, he'd said quietly, but I'm really sorry. I've been doing the counseling and I'm starting to understand how messed up it was that I just stood there. I should have stopped him. I should have been better. Keisha had looked at him for a long moment, weighing his words. Forgiveness was complicated, not a switch you could flip but a process you had to walk through. I appreciate you saying that, she'd finally replied. And I hope you really do become better, not for me but for yourself, and for the next person who might need someone to stand up for them. Marcus had nodded, his eyes glistening slightly. I will. I promise. Now, on this particular Thursday morning in early spring, Keisha rolled herself to the bus stop under a sky painted in shades of pink and orange. The air smelled like blooming flowers and fresh possibilities. She arrived early, as she often did, enjoying the quiet moment before the school day began. But she wasn't alone for long. A car pulled up, Mr. Patterson's personal sedan, not the school bus. He rolled down his window with a warm smile. Morning, Keisha. Just wanted to check on you before my route starts. Everything good? Everything's great, Mr. Patterson, Keisha replied, her smile genuine and bright. Glad to hear it. You keep shining, young lady. He drove off with a wave. Minutes later, Jasmine's older brother dropped her off at the stop. Jasmine had become one of Keisha's closest friends, the kind who texted her random thoughts at midnight and showed up with coffee on rough mornings. She plopped down on the bench next to Keisha's wheelchair, already chattering about the chemistry test they had third period. Two freshmen arrived next, a boy named Isaiah and a girl named Destiny who Keisha had mentored as part of the school's new peer support program. "Morning, Keisha," they called out cheerfully. The bus stop had transformed from a place of dread into just another part of her routine, no longer haunted by fear but filled with friendly faces. When the school bus arrived, Mr. Patterson greeted everyone with his usual enthusiasm. As Keisha boarded, she glanced out the window one last time at the spot where she'd fallen 3 months ago. The memory was still there, still real, but it no longer had power over her. It had become part of her story, not the ending but a turning point that led somewhere better, somewhere stronger. At school, Keisha had joined the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and become an active voice in student government. She'd given a presentation to the entire student body about accessibility and respect that had received a standing ovation. Teachers now asked her opinion on how to make their classrooms more inclusive. She'd even been interviewed by the local newspaper for a feature on teen advocacy. That afternoon, as Keisha finished up her last class, her phone buzzed with a text from Gloria. "Big ride this weekend for a 12-year-old boy in Riverside being bullied at school. Could really use your voice and perspective. You in?" Keisha smiled and typed back immediately. "Absolutely. Count me in." She discovered something powerful over these past 3 months. Her experience, as painful as it had been, gave her a unique ability to connect with others going through similar struggles. When she spoke at Road Guardians events or wrote on her blog, people listened. Not because she had all the answers, but because she'd lived through the questions. That evening, Keisha sat at her desk working on a new blog post. Her room had changed too. The walls now displayed photos from Road Guardians events, motivational quotes she'd collected, and a framed copy of the local newspaper article featuring her story. On her desk sat the card Gloria had given her that first morning, now worn from being carried in her backpack every day, a talisman of protection and belonging. She wrote, "Strength isn't about being able to walk or run or meet society's narrow definition of normal. Strength is about getting back up, even when the world knocks you down. Strength is about knowing your worth, even when others try to diminish it. And strength is about accepting help, building community, and using your voice to protect others who are still finding theirs." As she typed, her mother knocked softly on the door frame. "Hey baby, how you doing?" "I'm good, Mom. Really good." Diane walked in and sat on the edge of Keisha's bed, studying her daughter with eyes that had watched her transform from a scared, hurting girl into a confident young woman. "You know what your grandmother used to tell me? She said our family was made of strong women, women who faced hard things but never let those things break them." She paused, her eyes glistening. "I see that strength in you every single day, Keisha. I am so incredibly proud of the woman you're becoming." Keisha rolled over to her mother and took her hand. "I learned from the best." They sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, mother and daughter, both survivors in their own ways. Later that night, as Keisha prepared for bed, she looked at the Road Guardian's vest hanging on her closet door. The motorcycle with wings spread wide seemed to catch the lamplight, almost glowing. She thought about everything that had changed, the friends she'd made, the confidence she'd found, the purpose she'd discovered in helping others. The accident hadn't stolen her life. It had redirected it in ways she never could have imagined. The bullying hadn't broken her. It had revealed her resilience and connected her to a community of protectors. And the bikers hadn't just saved her that morning. They'd shown her what she'd always been but never fully believed. A warrior, exactly as May had called her. As Keisha turned off her light and settled into bed, she thought about the upcoming weekend ride to Riverside. Another child was facing what she'd faced. Another young person felt alone and powerless. But they wouldn't be alone for long. The Road Guardians would show up, 99 strong, and they'd stand as a wall between that child and cruelty. And this time, Keisha would be part of that wall. This time, she'd be one of the protectors. She smiled in the darkness, feeling the weight of her new purpose settle over her like a comfortable blanket. Tomorrow was Friday. The weekend would bring another ride, another opportunity to stand up for someone who needed it. But tonight, in this quiet moment, she simply felt grateful for her mother's love, for Gloria and Terrell's friendship, for the community that had embraced her, and for the girl she'd become through fire and grace. The wheelchair that had once felt like a prison now felt like a throne. And Keisha Miller, the humble girl from a quiet neighborhood who'd been knocked down and counted out, had learned to wear her crown with dignity, courage, and unshakable strength. Sometimes heroes arrive on two wheels, thundering into your life exactly when your heart needs them most. And sometimes, in the process of being saved, you discover you always had the strength to save yourself and others. The road ahead was long, but Keisha was ready. She was a road guardian now, and guardians don't back down. They stand up. They show up. They rise. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Unbroken Grace Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers all around the world.